Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Joel Madden, and this is Artist Friendly. On this episode, I'm talking to songwriter, artist, and the lead singer of Incubus, Brandon Boyd. The band is celebrating the anniversary and the re-record of their multi-platinum album, Morning View. We'll get into that and lots of other things. Let's go.
My kind. I don't want no bad times. I don't want to have bad.
I have this theory about 90s alternative rock.
Hit me with it.
Yeah. But in the world of like rock and roll in the 90s, that was born in the 90s, and all those miles that you earned on the road, all those shows you did from zero to stadiums, right? And I think we're now living in a time where plenty of bands are forming every day, and there will always be, I think, like rock music will always be represented in its kind of organic form, and bands will be born. But there's this era of music that will never be again. It's just not possible to recapture that era and that time. Then the next decade of art telling that story is going to be great soundtracks and great stories and great movies. And this was before information was shared the way it is now and so quick. So there was all the aspects of that, whether it was the darker side of it and then the peaks of joy you could feel if you had success at that time, which you guys did. That's what our idea of classic rock, like if you got the chance to see Led Zeppelin, if you got the chance to see these incredible bands, right? To me, it's like this timeless music that you're one of, think about it, even if it was hundreds, you're one of hundreds. And then of those hundreds, how many are still vital and can make music and art,
or still like each other,
are still healthy, right?
True.
Stayed healthy, found a way to live a real life,
that's a big part
and not
of it.
become like a shadow of a person that, like a shell of a person that just kind of limps along through life because they couldn't figure out how to be a real person.
Surviving the experience is a huge part of what you're talking about. I think it's and it's something that doesn't really get talked about in our wider kind of like entertainment culture or our art culture, is that our line of work has a weirdly high kill rate. It kills a lot of people young.
The mortality rate is not good.
It's wild. And so if you kind of spot that at an early enough moment, you have the opportunity to, like we were saying earlier, you and I were talking about the very clear kind of like pitfalls there, or the minefield, whatever you want to call it. If you can spot it, you can learn to navigate it. It's hard, and you're gonna step on some mines here and there. But if you expect it coming, it can keep you humble, and it can also help you survive the experience. Because it does have some incredible things to it, and some of the opportunities that it affords. And, the ability to make a living expressing yourself and becoming a multifaceted artist. That was always my dream, was that I would just be able to express myself. I didn't care if we were going to be famous or if we were going to make millions of dollars. I just knew from a very, very young age that I needed to paint and write, whatever that looked like. And so it was actually kind of surprising once we started finding some success in the music world, because I did not grow up necessarily dreaming about being the singer of a band. I thought I was going to be a painter. But as it turns out...
You are a painter, as it turns out, but...
Yeah, but to me, writing songs is painting. They're so similar. They're different in very clear ways, and the results are different. But then a lot of the results are very similar too. It's just painting is a more tangible, touchable version of the process, like the wider process. I think that's why I love it, is because one day I'll have a melody swimming around in my head that is sort of unattached to anything, and maybe it's similar for you, and you'll just walk through your day kind of humming it. You're like, oh, this is a cool melody. Majors and minors, and it's giving me a certain feeling. Is that this song? No. Is it a piece of this song? Maybe. And you just kind of let it sit with you, and it's sort of in the background. And then all of a sudden, a phrase will attach itself to it. that doesn't really make any sense. And then you start to refine it in the back of your head. And you're painting, essentially, is what you're doing. When you're actually physically painting and you're putting a brush to a canvas, it's just a more tangible, immediate version of that process, in my experience, at least.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And as an Incubus fan, it's awesome to hear. Cause your lyrics, they feel to me, I've always felt like poems to me. They've always felt like poetry. It's always felt like someone was sitting there writing like a little bit of an, sometimes less abstract, sometimes more abstract, but it all felt like metaphorical. It all felt like, but it felt like it started in a book of writing. And like, if you
usually does.
And that's the thing to me is like, God, I would love to like get that book. Like I'd love to read through all the book and read read some of the lyrics that never did come out, the writings that no one ever got to see, that are like probably brilliant and too hard to shape into a song or whatever. Maybe. But like, there's something there that I think is like really special. And I'll bet you any amount of money that if you release that book one day of old writing, that shit would be dope.
Or people be like, man, this is awful.
They really did pick the good ones.
Right? Maybe they did just write the good ones. No, I actually have been, I started a Substack I think it's about a year ago. You know Substack?
Yeah.
And I wanted to share kind of my longer form writings and disparate poems and song ideas that never quite made it to the cutting room floor. So, and over the last year or so since it's been out, I've shared maybe, 8 or 10 of those like acoustic demos that I record at home that I had at some point had sent to the guys in the band, be like, along with many, many others. And these were the ones that didn't get a response. But there was something in them to me that still struck some kind of emotional chord or intellectual chord.
It's important to you. Like,
and I was like, it's not garbage. Yeah. Maybe it's not like worth developing into a full song, but it's kind of like looking into someone's sketchbook. There are certain sketches in a sketchbook that you feel compelled to turn into a larger, more sort of grandiose piece of art. And then there are some that want to live just there and they're cool like that. Yeah. So that's what my Substack has kind of become. And it's
how do people like go see it? Where do they go?
They just go to Brandon Boyd on Substack. I think my Substack is called A Wink and a Nod. Like,
and
cool. You can, there's like a free tier and then there's just a subscriber tier as well.
Cool.
Where they get the cooler shit.
You brought me this game you did called Two Doors.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How did this happen?
This was, I like we were saying before, I grew up I watched movies because we had a television and we had a VCR, but we didn't have cable. Yep. And we had no like reception. I grew up in like the hills outside of Los Angeles. And so spent a lot of time outside, spent a lot of time drawing, writing. But when we were really bored, we played board games. Yeah. This was a thing of a bygone era.
So did we.
But it has a place in my heart.
Totally.
So one of the first games I remember was memory games.
Yeah, totally.
Where you mix up the things, you turn them over and you flip one over and you try and find its match. So I did this series of paintings called Portals a handful of years ago, and there were a bunch of them. I did them on like 4x4 or 6x6 pieces of paper, and I made duplicates of all of them, and then I found synonyms for doors across just all of them. And there's a bunch of great, beautiful words that are synonyms for doors. And then so it's a memory game. So you're looking for the match, and they're all based on the paintings, and then they have the synonyms for the doors. So you're looking for two doors.
It's awesome, dude.
It looks cool, right? It feels good to hold in your hand.
Even just the packaging and the way it looks is cool.
Yeah, it's fun. And then the other thing is just a regular ass jigsaw puzzle based on a painting I did a few years back.
Based on one of your paintings, which is amazing. This kind of stuff, though, is like my favorite stuff.
I love this stuff too, man.
Like making toys is essentially what we're always doing. We're writing songs, drawing pictures, making toys.
But so many of them are intangible. So I have this thing where I like to still hold something.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just careening into the future of this Nobody touches anything. We don't connect with each other in real time. Everything's digital. It all lives in the cloud, you know?
It's more fun to play with things.
Sometimes you got to put your hands on stuff and like collect
all my
things.
stuff here.
I can see, you get the
little trinkets along the way that have little personal stories or meanings, or you just like them.
Yeah, right. And they remind you of a moment in your life when you went and got them, and
take you back to a happy place.
Isn't it wild how far like skateboard culture has come? Surf culture as well, but skateboard culture was always more kind of like the hoodlum skateboarding.
It's the hoodlums and it's the rabble rousers and the troublemakers, as they're treated that way anyways.
It used to be illegal to skateboard in most places.
Yeah,
and we would get chased by security and cops and stuff, and that was sort of part of the fun in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Like you start getting chased on foot by security, but you had this thing that let you like glide across concrete. So it was like kind of exciting.
Yeah, you could get away.
Try and catch me
half the time, you know? But I like the story because you have this thing that is dismissed for so long. And the world at large that decides what's valuable. And it's usually the most square, not creative, lame people who have decided what is acceptable, what's not, what's valuable, what's not.
Yeah.
And you have this company started with skateboarders in mind that are promoting and nurturing these kids that are hanging out at their shops.
Yeah.
And essentially, I know there's a lot more to the Supreme story, but in the basic idea is we have this idea that everyone agrees is those punk kids over there, they're printing their T-shirts.
Yeah.
And over time, you have this really cool group of people starting to engage other cool people. So you see the collaborations they did. And over time, it becomes this brand that, at the peak, they sell the brand for, I think, like $2 billion. And
wow,
think about that.
That's wild.
So they created this value in the world, all while being told it's not valuable, or, we're going to arrest you if you skate out here on the street. All the things that came with it.
Yeah.
Shifts to, you have people investing, serious people in the world that otherwise wouldn't feel comfortable walking in the store 20 years ago.
Right.
Now
they're lining up to get into the store.
Yeah, and now people are making whole careers on reselling.
Yep.
So now think about the ancillary market around that culture and the brand, a culture that brand kind of sat in the middle of, along with some other brands, right? And I'm sure a lot of streetwear purists and people could come and argue this and that with me, and I would be open to. But the idea that this brand that was a cultural movement, and in the end, what that was born out of to where it got, to me, is the aspirational story of what you can do when everyone looks at you and goes, "Hey, you're not worth anything." And those little hobbies that you're into, forget about it.
Watch out for those kids, the ones that are into the things that are so disregarded. It was the same thing with surfers too.
Yeah.
And I love looking at skating because I grew up obsessed with surfing and skating. Surfing was kind of first for me.
Right.
I was
because you're like a jump and a skip to Malibu from where you grew up.
Yeah. So there was a beach bus that
catch
actually
a ride
would come and pick us up and drop us off.
That's cool.
It was super, super cool that the town provided that for us. But yeah, skating, surfing, they're these beautiful adaptations, creative adaptations to environments. So with like skating, the people that get the best at it come from these like deeply like urban jungle type environments. And to look at them, it looks like it's just concrete everywhere, billboards, there's no nature around you. And this sort of like pervasive human creativity broke through in young people, where it was like, I'm going to dance on that shit. I'm going to do flips and stuff with this piece of wood all over this environment you created. And you're going to tell me not to for a long time. And then it's going to become a multi-billion-dollar industry at some point. Nobody would have known what was going to happen, obviously, but watching its trajectory, which has been swift, by the way. Like we were saying, like when we were kids, they were chasing us out of parking garages for skating. Yeah. Now there's skate parks everywhere, and it's producing incredible skaters.
And professional athletes.
And professional athletes,
that's a aspirational goal for people who get into skating is maybe I could become a pro.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's a real future. There are people,
It's true.
there are parents who invest thousands and thousands of dollars into their kids becoming better skaters.
Yeah.
Because there's an actual end game
Yeah.
if you become a pro.
Yeah.
That's
So
a real
true.
thing. We think about like, that is what I get so excited about is like that same idea that kid could start writing songs in his bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
That band could start in their basement or their garage. And now, you have kids that can create magic on their laptop. And there may be more traffic as far as what we're up against getting people's attention.
Yeah.
But there's going to be genius that comes out every once in a while. There's going to be an artist that you cannot stop their creativity.
That's the stuff that really excites me about music in particular, is that the entry level has gotten it's been so democratized.
Yeah.
Where we have now on our laptops a better studio that existed in the state-of-the-art studio 20 years ago, and you have just right on your laptop. I don't love most of the music that's being made that way now, but I know it's just a matter of time before people, they hit pay dirt, you know what I mean? And something incredible happens that we could never have anticipated coming.
I feel the same way. I don't love a bunch of it.
Yeah. I'm waiting for like the punk version of digital music. And it has little things happen, or like the hardcore version where you're like, what's this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The first time I heard Refused, I was like,
yeah,
what who are these Swedish dudes wearing suits and more? What are they so angry about? I love it.
And they created a classic, timeless piece of music history.
Yeah, it's true.
It's pretty cool.
Highly imitated as well.
Yeah.
Over and over again. Yeah. And we've done our best to steal from them from time to time.
But I think that'll come. There'll absolutely be some genius artist who makes some art digitally, and we're all just blown away at how they did it.
And maybe it already exists now, and it's just the nature of the digital culture that makes it harder to find, because we're so used to just kind of swiping through things, and if something doesn't immediately catch our attention, we miss it.
Yeah, or harder to tell what's original.
Yeah.
Because the minute someone puts out a piece of digital art, it's someone screenshots it, takes it, recreates it, puts a filter on it, and it's really hard to create something that's seen as original when something pops, even just in a little way, and a small group of people attach onto it.
Yeah.
A bunch of people take it. It's easy to steal.
I mean,
and they start recreating it.
It's kind of the norm for it to just get sort of repurposed and recreated. And
that's why some people say it's better now. There are I believe there's 100% absolutely aspects of like releasing music today that make everything easier.
Yeah.
But I think it's harder now
to break through
and to create something original and actually get credit for it. And the new conversation will be a different kind of argument over like if that's the real authentic article. All of us as bands in the 90s, we all used to get criticized for you sound like them, or you sound like them. Like that was normal.
Yeah.
Every band went through that.
Yeah.
But it was still a simpler argument.
Right.
Than what now I think you have people like tracking the digital life of something and like you figuring out like where was this born? But originality will break through as it always does.
There'll be things that come through that confound people.
Yeah.
And that's what's so exciting about the genre of just in music in general, or art, is there'll be periods of stagnation, and then there'll be something that just blows everybody away and they struggle to understand it.
Yeah.
And then it gets figured out, and then it's over. And then that artist has to go through that whole process.
But one of the cool things about Incubus to me is where you come from and then where you're at. The legacy, it's just going to be very hard for bands to create these kinds of legacies. And I think some will. I think it'll be fewer and far between, but I think that some will. And there are certainly like really great rock bands that are in the last 5 to 10 years and even in the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
great rock bands that'll continue to come and make great music.
Yeah.
But there's something about, to me, the rock in the 90s, it's going to be, I think, appreciated for the rest of time.
I agree with you. I probably like every couple of years I go back to some of the albums that made me want to write music, made me want to be in a band. And I think I check in with them for any number of reasons. Like I'll hear one of the songs on the radio. I'm like, I got to go check that record out. Part of me is trying to figure out if I'll still feel the same way about it, or if it like still, holds water for me.
Still hits like it used
Still
to.
does. And so many of these sort of seminal records, and I'll go through some of them if you don't mind.
I would love to hear
they
records.
still kind of fuck me up in the best way.
Which records are they?
So I turned 15 in 1991. This is when we started our band. And that year I got Nirvana, Nevermind.
Yeah.
I got the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic.
Yep.
I think Bad Motorfinger by Soundgarden came out 91, and soon thereafter was Super Unknown. And I also got Alice in Chains' Dirt, I think that same year.
I love Alice in Chains, dude.
Same.
I fucking
Incredible. But I could just stop there. I won't stop there. I mean, you just keep going. But then,
that year was pretty
It was heavy.
prolific in like records.
yeah. But then the just a couple of years after that, then you had like, I discovered PJ Harvey, and then in the later 90s, I discovered Jeff Buckley, and then amongst that period of time, I discovered Faith No More and Mr. Bungle, and then did I mention Bjork?
You didn't mention Bjork, but I love Bjork.
Yeah, like there was just, and all of it was there was some rock, there was some electronic, there was some sort of indie, there was some punk, there was some hardcore, and we were open to all of it, and we wanted all of it. We were just hungry for all this stuff, as I'm sure any 15-year-old would be. But there's something about that grouping of bands that was so impactful to, I can just speak for myself. I know the guys in our band share in a lot of those opinions, but we were lucky enough to grow up in LA where these bands were coming through regularly. And I got to see Nirvana. I got to see
That's crazy.
Pearl Jam.
Where did you see Nirvana?
I saw Nirvana with the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam at the Forum.
Wow.
I think I had the very, very top nosebleed seat. So all the guys were like this big, but it was still amazing.
I think one of the best like bigger venues you can see a band at is the Forum. I think it just sounds good.
Yeah, it's great,
And
especially now since they redid it.
Yeah, since they redid it for
Yeah,
sure.
it's much better. But yeah, one in particular that I go back to, one album I go back to probably the most from that period of time is Super Unknown by Soundgarden. The whole record from front to back just destroys me. Like it simultaneously makes me want to quit and keep trying. Chris was something. He was like an alien.
I mean, and when you think about the elements that make a great band, right? So you have the musicians, so the guitar work,
yeah,
and then the voice,
yeah,
and then you get to the melody and the lyrics.
Yeah,
when you listen to Soundgarden, and then think about like the time that those bands were making those records, they were just writing songs and recording them.
Yeah,
there wasn't a committee like
they were just a band.
The songwriters coming in to get the chorus right or whatever. No,
it was dudes in a room,
guys in a room. Pearl Jam.
Yep.
Nirvana.
Yep.
And Alice in Chains, man. Alice in Chains, for whatever reason, maybe it was the time when I discovered that, like rock music or whatever, and they were on the radio. They had all the songs on the radio. But that band, like I have a playlist of all those bands.
Really?
You guys are on it.
Oh, nice.
So it's my like rock. It's like my rock playlist.
Yeah.
I listen to it every day.
Oh, that's
so
awesome,
I listen
man.
to your band every day.
No way.
Yeah.
That's so rad, man. Thank you.
And I think it's probably like it's a growing playlist that I keep adding songs to as I remember.
Did you ever get into Jeff Buckley's stuff?
Love Jeff Buckley.
Yeah, he was incredible, man. Did you ever get into Shudder to Think?
Yes. I mean, I didn't become a huge fan, but the stuff that everyone knew, I knew.
Yeah. They were a sleeper band for me. Like I first heard them and I didn't really understand it. And then I saw a side project they had I think it was called Mind, Science of Mind, if I'm not mistaken. And Buckley was playing bass. it was the only time, and he wasn't singing. It was the only time I ever saw him on stage in person. And then, he died so young and so soon.
It's crazy.
So it was really sad, but he was an incredible talent. I go back to his record Grace quite a lot too.
Yeah.
I still really enjoy it.
That's the one that I had that I listened to.
Letters to My Sweetheart the Drunk was the posthumous double record that came out.
Remember the Lemonheads?
Oh yeah. They were cool too.
I love them.
Yeah. What's his name? Evan Dando?
Evan Dando, yeah.
There was so much good music in that period of time and so many compelling personalities, and
it was a wild time when you think about it.
Yeah.
I actually saw something the other day and it was like Nevermind, Dirt, that Soundgarden record.
Was it pictures of cassettes?
And they were all within like 30 days of each other.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I was 15 when all those records came out.
Crazy.
I got most of those records in one sitting. I took all my chore money. And
Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, love Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah.
Those records, but it was the 90s, man. Like there was so much good musical nutrition.
Yeah. Doesn't it make you wonder like what was in the water that made it so there was so much, it was such a rich period of time creatively that doesn't always happen.
No.
A lot of people moved to Seattle during that period of time because there was like, what's going on up there? We want to be a part of this. Even like, I had friends that had bands down here when we were teenagers, and they like packed up their shit and moved to Seattle. That was going to be the secret ingredient,
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a movement, a cultural movement. And I think it was deeper than just, I think the music was the soundtrack, but I think that it was actually like a time. It was like it had to be some kind of like time in humanity of some kind where like we were on the cusp of like everyone was kind of pushing to the new age. Because I think that's when, if you think about when the digital age started in the 2000s, it was being created then.
Yeah.
It had to be.
Yeah.
So it was like a cultural movement to push the envelope and the boundaries of like what we accept, how we do things. It was probably, to me, also culturally like the first decade where we were challenging what people would accept as the norm or okay. And I think music was reflecting like that anger, frustration with the past.
There was also a
optimism for the future or something.
Sure. There was a healthy skepticism for establishment in that period of time. I think every generation has its version of that.
Where like, what kind of world do I want my kids to be able to participate in? Because I want my daughter to be able to grow up in a world where she can be herself, make decisions she feels like she needs to make,
right?
Have the experiences at any given time that she has to go through, and be able to exist in the world as herself and not be shamed, controlled, caged.
This is a really interesting point, actually, and it actually takes me back to what we were talking about earlier with growing up, having the courage to express yourself. If there's anything, I don't have children yet. I hope to at some point, but like, I'm sure this has been high on your list of wants for your kids in the world. You probably want them to be free to make mistakes.
And then also be able to look at your parents as people that are just like you.
Yeah.
We were kids, we grew up.
Yeah.
We stumbled into adulthood.
Did some stupid shit.
Tons of stupid shit.
Yep.
Some cool shit. Some of this, some of that. And like, I could go back and try to explain where I was at the time. Some of it I probably could. Some of it I probably can't.
Right. In your case, they could like open a magazine and be like,
yeah,
explain this,
what you said there, what you said there. And you can try, but you're not going to satisfy everybody's need to like prove you wrong about it.
Yeah.
You have to accept that. And then you also have like, as artists and entertainers, where people have, at least they've documented their idea of what you were doing. Cause a lot of that's also like off. It's just like 20 degrees off.
Yeah.
And they didn't get it right, but it became the headline or the narrative. Like that's the other thing about entertainment.
Especially growing up.
You go to your Wikipedia page and it's just the headlines of like the articles that were kind of officiated as completely true.
Yeah.
And it's all just like versions of something. You want your kid to kind of, you don't want them to not respect you, but you also want them to know, like, I'm just like you. I had to like grow up, figure it out, got some stuff right, got some stuff wrong, learned a whole bunch.
The term that comes to mind is freedom to fail.
Yeah.
There's something so beautiful in failure, and there's not enough of an importance placed on it. It seems as if we're all doing our best to not fail. And it's not as if we aim to fail, but failure is kind of the norm. Successes are extremely rare, especially in a world that's as competitive. You could just choose one line of work, music.
Yep.
Most of everything we do fails.
Most of it's a failure.
By any metric.
By metrics, yeah.
By those, yeah. But every once in a while, as a result of all of those failures, something breaks through the cracks and sees the light of day. And it's a miracle that it does, because of those same metrics. It's like you're looking at how many people are trying at the same time you are. And so if one thing breaks through, it's insane. It like doesn't happen. And so what gets focused on is the shiny object of the little green thing popping through the concrete. But what we're not looking at is that what it went through, how many times it tried and failed and tried and failed. In our case, it's like we're writing like multiple albums.
Yeah.
Over the span of a quarter of a lifetime. That's mostly failures, right?
Yeah, it's all the turtles that didn't get off the beach.
Exactly.
They died.
But we keep trying and you keep trying. And so I think inherent in that is it's very apparent that it's the desire merely to make art, make music. That's the strongest thing.
And to connect with each other.
And to connect, yeah. But yeah, the freedom to fail and to trip and stumble, I think that these are some things that are kind of being lost in our culture, because kids are so afraid they're so afraid to fail that they don't even want to try.
Because
you know what I mean?
That's the thing, is like you can't fail anymore, because if you show failure, it gets memorialized and it starts trending.
Yeah.
And your failure
trends
now as big as any success you could have. Yeah. And a failure could become your legacy.
Yeah.
And it's just not realistic. It's not reality. It's not how life works.
Yeah.
But it is the reality. The perceived reality we live in is that most people are spending a certain percentage of their day, whether it's 10% or 50%, in the phone, on one of a dozen platforms,
right?
Connecting with people. I think that's why they're doing it. But
Heavy
they're
quote, connecting,
participating in this kind of false reality of like a highlight reel of. I'm always kind of the older I get, the more careful I am about posting something personal and something that looks perfect. Yeah, because it's just not.
It's so true.
I'm like, me and Nicole have been together for 17 years. We were talking about it. That's 17 years of trying and failing in some places.
Sure.
But
how necessary were those failures?
Big time.
And how much did they teach you?
And we're better today.
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, we were not in the same position. Okay, what's the secret of marriage? There's no secret to marriage. It's just try until you can't anymore.
Right.
And just keep going down the road. And that's why we also and I've said this before here, I don't ever judge anyone on their failures in what they would what people would perceive as a failed marriage. It might not be a failed marriage. It might be some information they got out of that where they could actually go and be happy.
Yeah.
And I always really respect and admire the people that can consciously break up and do it gracefully in a world that doesn't want that. Everybody wants a fight. Everybody wants they want to watch the exciting, entertaining, messy fight. Yeah. And it's almost like we all get drunk on it, and then we wake up the next day and hope no one remembers what we were the shit we were throwing at them, and we move on to the next train wreck of someone else's pain and misery.
That's something that alarms me about where the digital culture has been going, is it's sort of showing a strong masochistic streak in amongst our culture, and it's frightening. It's not it's one thing to
dangerous.
Yeah, it really is. It's one thing to be like, did you see this thing where this person failed so hard? Ha ha ha. And then when you start to realize that those are the things that are the most popular, it's like, ooh, we're learning something about ourselves that isn't necessarily good, and it might need
dark.
a little bit of deeper reflection.
It's dark. It's really dark. But and like real people's lives can get ruined. So you have people that really do kill themselves.
Yeah.
You have people that really do lose their jobs. You have, and then, like I said, sometimes there's some justice. Sometimes there is someone who
needed to be taken down,
needed to be removed from that position.
Yeah,
those cases are, I think, fewer in between all of the crazy shit. I do think though that like I really believe that like at the core people are good. Most people are good.
Yeah.
And given the opportunity to do something good, they will. And so, I mean, that's what I have to believe to at least participate a little bit. Cause I mean, doing this, I'm participating in the digital culture.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not as if there aren't incredible things that can happen as a result of the new tech. I think that this new technology, in particular, this forum, like sort of the podcast forum, has incredible potential as a sort of decentralizing mechanism.
Yep.
You know, the media was so top down for forever, just until recently, just until, you know, less than 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden this new tech comes up where it decentralizes it to a point where it rattled the tree. And it shook off all the dead leaves. And there were a lot of dead leaves that kind of stuff needed to come down and needed to be shaken up. I think we're still probably in a period of overcorrection where there's a lot of people saying things on successful platforms like this that are confusing a lot of people too.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, you know, with every correction, there comes overcorrection. And so this is the way we work. You know, it's like this. We have to run the gamut all the way, knock shit over on this side, and then we correct for it and knock shit over here, and we'll find some kind of equitable middle of some kind.
I agree with that.
But it's going to take some time.
Authenticity and originality and things that are compelling always kind of break through.
What do you find yourself normally like talking about on this podcast? We've run a bit of a spectrum here, but
yeah.
Is it all over the place, or is it music centric, art centric?
It always starts in music or art. I really think we talked about therapy. I think that I learned how to have conversations that I got a lot out of. And I think that I started to carry that out into my life in a real way where I don't feel like I really waste any conversation with anyone.
That's wonderful.
I found myself surrounded by artists and having these conversations in studios, and it could be about music, but generally always comes down to people sharing insights or tools that they discovered that have helped them. And I do think that there's the people that listen to this show, I find it to be like a group, a growing large group of people that are looking for more insight into how they can evolve and improve their own life. And and so it some of it's a little philosophical sometimes, but I really do think it's like actually the reality of our life is the real life we're living, and those decisions we make actually have an impact on our future.
Yeah,
and if we can start to introduce ideas that are better than the ones we held, we can evolve.
Yeah.
And I didn't really believe in that before I discovered it. I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't aware of myself. I wasn't aware that I could change. I thought that I would have, coming from, essentially like coming from poverty, which I think was had the biggest effect on me. And having, things in my family like addiction, and all different kinds of the abuse spectrum, neglect, things like that. You jump out into the world and you carry all this baggage with you, and you don't realize you can kind of unpack it, make sense of it, and leave it.
Yep.
And that was the work I did probably in my 30s, was really just like learning about that.
Yeah.
And then wanting to share that with people I could see hadn't discovered they could do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody has access to therapy and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier today than probably it's ever been because there's apps and stuff that can really be helpful.
Yeah, there's also been a huge kind of demystifying of the therapeutic process, and it's, you know, being televised. There are really popular shows on network TV.
Exactly.
Whether it's Dr. Phil or someone like Tony Robbins, it's like a lot of people are interested in improving their quality of life. Do you find that the stuff that you learned, you were saying like in your 30s, found its way in some way, shape, or form into your songwriting?
Everything.
Okay, so that's the place where, in my opinion, art is impactful. And I think that artists, if we have a cultural function of some kind, I like to think of artists as translators.
Yep.
Because we have something that's sort of inert in us that is hell-bent on making sense of our experience here. And everyone's trying to make sense of their experience to a degree. But the mediums we choose as artists are sense-making apparatuses. And we are doing our best to make sense of the chaos in our own lives. And sometimes there are ideas that break through poetically, whether it's our use of metaphors or our storytelling, or even the melodies we choose, that can be incredibly helpful and insightful to somebody listening to them. And I'm saying that based on what I have been able to glean from my experience with music, in listening to it, and then having the experience of writing songs with our band Incubus has been such a fascinating tool. It's a sense-making apparatus. Yeah. Ultimately, I am doing my best to make sense of my time here and the things that I've experienced, the things I experience, and then pushing forward the things I hope to experience. And it's all coming out in the medium of music and art. And I hope, like in my heart of hearts, that it has like the tiniest resemblance to the experience I had with music growing up, because I made sense of my young, chaotic life through music and through art. Did that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you from my, my view, because I can only share with you like what I've like watching you guys from the beginning. And our guitar player in our band, Billy, is like the biggest Incubus fan of all time. Whatever fan club or anything you guys, he's a member, I'm sure of it. But from my perspective, you guys did that. You've always done that. And it's very rare that you see a band and then coming through being a fan, like a real fan, then wanting to be like my idols and starting a band and then having success doing that, and then getting on the other side of it and being like a functional, productive person in the world that goes out and lives his life and is raising kids and trying to work and do businesses and things like that. This is a functional life, right? Like finding a way to make a living and be here. I've gotten like a weird view of all these different sides. And you guys are one band that's just like, and coming from a time where that was really hard to achieve this, in my opinion, because as great as I say, the legacy of rock and roll that was born in the 90s, it's this, like we said, those records that all came out in the span of a month in 91. Think about the decade of music that came out. And it's just, it'll blow your mind if you stacked all those records up. Yeah. It was a magical time. You guys were a part of that. On the other side of that, if you weren't dead, addicted to drugs, a mess, how did you become this grounded group of productive members of society, right? And still can make art, and still can go out and do the biggest shows. Incubus touring must be, from my perspective, it's bigger than it's ever been, even though you may not tour as much. The shows are huge. To be able to like function as a band still, all still like each other. Right.
We love each other, actually.
Which is incredible.
We have a phenomenal time still.
So think about that. How do you, to be able to achieve that kind of balance and still still be able to walk around in the world every day and have a real life that functions? Like, again, like I think it's something like, they say dysfunctional family. Most families and then there's functional families, right? And a band can be a dysfunctional family or a functional family. Relationships can be dysfunctional or functional.
Right.
And I think like how did this group of guys continue to function and be so grounded and still do prolific shows, make prolific art, make prolific paintings, but also be in the world and not float around? That's an achievement. I think probably the greatest achievement, in my opinion.
I really appreciate those words, man. It's and my appreciation for them is I could just stop at like, that's so nice of you, thank you. But I also know, because I've been there the whole time through it with this band, I know everything that we've gone through. We've gone through all of the same stories that every band has gone through.
Yeah.
There's really only like 5 stories in rock and roll.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And any one of them can take a band down.
Yeah, take you out.
Whether it's drugs and addiction or
jealousy,
ego, all of these things. We've had all of them, every single one of them. But we have, there's probably a number of factors that are not available to me in a conscious way that they could be the deciding things that I'm not aware of at this point in my life. But what I am able to observe is that we have a pervasive love and respect for each other, which I think probably goes a really long way. I think that we are appreciative at a base level, and then on the best day, kind of in awe of each other's individual abilities, what each person brings to the table. Like, I'm in awe of Michael's talent as a musician. When what was simple for him since we were children, I'm just like, how the fuck do you do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And then, so each person brings something so unique. And I think each of us, maybe through time spent, has learned a greater and greater appreciation for it. And I think at this point too, having been a band for 32 years, it can't be overstated enough that we've come to a point where it's like, this is a really cool job. If you can survive the dangers of it, and the chaos of it, it's super cool to go out and sing at the top of your lungs, and people keep showing up and they are singing as loudly as they know how to back at you. So it's this wild like feedback loop that's happening that's just gorgeous and fulfilling. You know what I mean?
I mean, you guys are playing the Hollywood Bowl. To me, that's like pinnacle.
It really is.
Greatness.
Yeah, Hollywood Bowl is kind of like the venue.
Yeah, when you think about, first of all, like amazing place to see and hear music.
Yeah.
Something about it is magical.
Yeah.
It's the open air and the,
knowing that somewhere like a mountain lion is hearing you and going.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And coyotes are out there singing along with you.
But to accomplish that, and not to say you guys haven't already accomplished those pinnacles, but to accomplish that now, whether it's again and again, but to do it now, I just look at that and I'm fucking blown away at that whole idea that like 32 years into your life as a band, you're having this pinnacle moment. What I would say is like those pictures live forever. That lives forever.
Right.
That picture of the band on stage at the Hollywood Bowl is it's iconic. You see that and you know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
You see that band and it's just big and magical feeling.
Yeah.
But to achieve that at 32 years in versus, 10 years in, 15 years in, maybe you can taste it a little bit more because you get the ability to slow the game down enough to actually enjoy it while you're there.
That's a really good point. I remember the first time we played at the Bowl, it was overwhelming.
The first time
being backstage and like seeing the pictures of the Beatles and, like it's just the backstage is small.
Yeah.
It's an old venue, but they have these gorgeous black and white photos of the other bands that have been there.
It's iconic.
And then I remember like every person that I'd ever met, including my family and cousins I never knew I had, they all came to the show, and the backstage was just like so intense. And I was so nervous until we walked out on stage. And then when we were out there, as I'm sure you know, once you're there doing it and you're in the moment, you're not nervous anymore. It's the lead up.
Yeah.
that's where all the scariness and the pressure is. But now, like, we've learned enough. We've played enough shows, I think, to understand where the nerves are going to be when they come up, how to kind of like
you can ride it.
Yeah, you ride it. How to mitigate some of the chaos of, you know, your family and your friends all want to come and you want them to be there, but there's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part about it at this point is getting my parents backstage parking.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
it's the
Dad,
little things.
You park right here.
It's the little
And then you
things.
just get to walk in
Yeah.
and watch from the stage if you want to. You know, those little things make it super, super fun. Because I can see, sometimes I see my parents in the audience and they're doing this.
Yeah.
And they're watching a little bit, but they're more like turning around and looking at the, 20,000 people behind them. And that's a trip.
Well, they're going to enjoy the details of it probably more than you will.
Yeah.
But it is like important that someone does.
Right.
And I think like it's not the first time you played for 20,000 people.
Right.
It's not about that.
Right.
There's something iconic about that. Not everyone is invited to do that. It's that venue doesn't just book anyone.
Right.
And certainly there are people right now that could sell 20,000 tickets that aren't necessarily right for the bowl, but there's something iconic about it.
Yeah.
That I think is like, I don't know that you guys are zooming out and thinking this is iconic until someone like says it to you.
Right.
And you're like, oh yeah, that
it needs to be
kind of
reflected
iconic.
back to us through a loved one for sure. Yeah.
But I think that's just interesting. It's and just incredible to be doing that now.
It's special for us too, because we grew up going to shows there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've seen so many shows there. One of my favorite ones was Dead Can Dance. I saw them in like the early 2000s, which was late for them because they've been around since I think like 1980 or something like that. But I had really good seats and I was sitting in the front. And I remember, have you ever gone to a show and just like started kind of tearing up?
Yeah.
For no particular reason other than it was just hitting all the right moments in you.
Special.
Yeah. It happens to me more than I actually care to admit. But Dead Can Dance at the Bowl, it was like 10 minutes into the show and I was just like, I just started crying.
It's pretty great.
So cool, man.
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
But do you think growing up in nature and in like what sounds like a more art-friendly, artistic, a lot of people would say probably like a hippie way, right? For our idea of it.
Yeah.
Do you think that gave you like a foundation of Zen or something that like allows you to go through this wild business of?
I think maybe my brothers and I were what I call free range kids. We, not having television reception and no cable made it so the television wasn't, it didn't distract us. We liked watching movies and we watched movies almost every night, but we watched movies. There were no commercials.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with MTV. I watched MTV. I started watching MTV once they started playing our band on MTV. That's when I started like watching MTV and I was watching to see if they would play our band on MTV.
Yeah.
And then they started doing it, which was kind of fun. But,
we didn't have cable either.
really?
Yeah.
See, I think it's better.
And we were always playing games and like making games up.
And you were probably getting in trouble more, but you're definitely more creative. And you started solidifying a more sort of core identity around who you were and what you wanted to do, or at least point towards, as a result of not having those kind of like earthly distractions.
100%. I think that the core of like, also like all the businesses we do today, me and my brothers do them together. And growing up, we always imagined things together, made up games together.
Yeah, same.
And had to entertain each other.
Yeah.
And we did like watching, we had a beta or a VHS.
Yeah.
One or the other.
Betamax was one format and VHS was the other.
Right. So I
Beta
think
was
we
the
had Beta.
small ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you had like 5 channels, like the 5 channels, whatever.
Network.
Yeah, network.
Yeah.
ABC, NBC, whatever. We were outside all the time. We lived in the woods,
Where did you grow up?
Maryland,
Oh, right. Okay.
down in the sticks.
Yeah.
So we were like always outside playing, making up games. And I really do think that like then we went into our adolescence, wanted to be like everyone else, started trying to figure out, were we athletes? No. Were we skateboarders? Not really.
Right.
Tried, and that was cool. And then we found music, and then it re-engaged our imagination. I think that we had really exercised as kids. I actually do think there's something to what you're saying. Like there's a muscle, your imagination, your creative muscle, that if you're allowed to as a kid run wild, you try all this stuff and you entertain yourself and you learn how to create stories.
Yeah.
You learn how to make games. You learn how to like build worlds. And no one's telling you not to.
Right.
And then you hit adolescence and you go to school and you're just trying to fit in because
the social pressures start to creep in.
Yeah. And you're trying to make sense of like, you're growing up and you're starting to like girls and you're this or that. All that stuff starts to happen. And you just want to be like everyone else because you don't want to be an outsider.
Right.
And so that's the awkward in between. And then something about you is an outsider because the group has probably all been running in the same path. And creative people tend to be a little bit of outsiders. So then you have to go back to creativity anyways. And that's where we ended up, like, we were a little bit misfits, end up starting a band. We find our world again and we start building it out and imagining a whole world where like this matters.
Yep.
And then I actually think that the core competency that we have is the ability to imagine something before it exists and then execute it.
Yeah.
And bring it to life.
That's that whole creating your own games and building your own worlds thing, which you're so right. Like when we're kids and we have the opportunity to do that, it actually creates life skills.
Yep, it does.
If you don't get eaten when you're outside crawling around in the forest.
Yeah.
My dad, I'll never forget, he was all about letting us be free range. And I think to an extent my mom was as well. And she had this giant brass bell that she would, when it was time to come home, she would just go, kung, 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 kung. She would hit the bell and it would echo through the hills and we'd hear it be like, oh, it's time to go home. But my older brother and I in particular, my pop gave us a good knife that had a snake bite kit in it and a compass.
That's crazy.
And he taught us how to treat a rattlesnake bite.
Because that's a real thing in California.
It actually can happen. Yeah. But we learned really quickly which animals did what, which ones to avoid, which ones we could pick up, which ones run away from. We learned which plants would make you itch and which ones would make you small and which ones would make you tall. I'm kidding about that part, but sort of.
Which mushrooms are poisonous? Which
ones
don't eat more than a
just
little
a bite.
Nibble of it.
Exactly. But as a result, like we were literally cutting paths through the Santa Monica Mountain. We were just with sometimes we had a machete and we would be cutting paths through. We'd come home and the ritual was we would check each other for ticks. We'd pull the ticks off each other and we'd go in and eat dinner around the table and tell our parents about our adventures. And, we found a waterfall or we went into a cave and there was this crazy spider and Darren picked up a snake and Darren's my older brother. And so I think back on it, I have very, very fond memories, even though there were moments where we were literally trying to kill each other. It was a little like Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
Occasionally. And then sometimes it was like Lord of the Rings, it just depends on which day. But I'm so, so thankful to have had an upbringing that was free range and also wasn't completely dominated by media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It didn't cloud your mind with like forced ideas of...
Yeah, because we created our own rules. We created our own games, like you were saying. And what an incredible blessing that was to be able to do. And then weirdly enough, it's like we entered into the larger world and it was like, oh no, I got my own ideas.
I'm not a painter, but I love painting. I love people's paintings and I collect art.
Yeah.
And it's not really, I'm not in the art game. I'm not flipping art. I've never sold anything. But I've definitely discovered some artists early that are, bigger artists now. Yeah. And that's really gratifying sometimes. But it's just as gratifying to own a painting of someone because you love it.
Yeah.
And you get to actually have it in your house.
Yeah.
And that's a really special thing to me.
For sure.
that print you gave me is like
I'm
a
glad
treasure.
I'm glad you like it, man.
Oh, dude, I'm so stoked. That was such a surprise. Because I like your art.
Thank you.
Is there anyone on Moonlight that just like you just love? And
I've been really fascinated by everyone we've worked with, and the Moonlight's relatively new. It was an idea born of the isolation of lockdown.
Yeah.
And it was such a weird period of time because the whole world was going to shit, but people were buying art like crazy. Doesn't make any sense. Like the metrics of it don't make sense. The only logic I can find is that people were sitting in their houses or their apartments and looking at blank walls. Like, I gotta do something about that finally. So it was this thing where I wanted to, I'd seen what I had done in my own efforts around art and painting, but then doing limited edition print series and showing my work and things. And I knew that there were other artists out there who we knew from, bands and film and stuff like that, who were really talented painters. And so I was like, I want to find these people. I want to talk to these people. I want to talk to them about their process and just kind of get a rapport going. So I've been surprised by everyone. We've done quite a lot of prints we're not even 2 years into it. But one person, you asked for one, I'll give you one. Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo.
oh wow,
Crazy artist.
super cool.
He is, and he's prolific. He has just, it looks like there's no end to his creativity, visually, sonically. He fascinates me.
What about Incubus? You guys gonna make music?
Yeah, we're, the Hollywood Bowl Show, we're going to do our album Morning View from front to back.
Yeah.
That's sort of the idea around the concert. And we're re-releasing Morning View. So we're doing like a re-record of it.
Sick.
So it's going to be Morning View 23 years later.
Sick.
For any number of reasons, but it's also kind of a fun exercise because we still play most of the songs live, but we've like refined them in certain ways. They're mostly true to form, but there are like we've crafted new endings and things to certain parts of them, which have gone over really well on the live forum. And then after that, we're going to, and so this fall and this winter, we're going to be writing new music. We just signed a new record deal for the first time in a long time with Virgin Records.
Awesome.
We've been an independent band for quite a long time. And so it was time to get some help.
Find a partner.
Find a partner like that. So yeah, we'll just be, writing music. I'm going to be showing paintings early next year at a gallery in Dallas called Samuel Lynn Galleries. They've been representing me there in Texas for a long time. Working on another art book.
Awesome.
Stuff, just, making little worlds.
Making stuff you like.
Yeah.
Dude, this was great.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it, man.
I can't wait to see. I'm going to be at the Hollywood Bowl Show. So
Are you? Cool.
yeah, I'll be there.
Awesome.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Thanks, dude. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Artist Friendly. If you really liked it, you can follow, like, subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time.
Bad times, I don't